despite the smokescreen of a phantom injury, Shedeur Sanders didn't lash out. He didn't post rants or point fingers. Instead, he kept quiet, focused, and patient, a posture that only deepened Eric Dickerson's support. Dickerson praised Sanders' maturity, calling his response a masterclass in leadership. But make no mistake, he wasn't quiet about the injustice. Citing insider intel and historical patterns, Dickerson accused Stefanski and the Browns of manipulating injury reports to freeze out a player they didn't want to succeed. His message was chilling. Sanders wasn't just benched, he was silenced.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Still, Dickerson didn't frame Sanders as a victim. He framed him as inevitable. The NFL can stage injuries, suppress reps, and spin media narratives, but talent like Sanders has a way of forcing its way through. The silence in the moment only amplified the storm to come. With veterans like Dickerson and Dion behind him, and the truth steadily surfacing, Sanders' journey is far from over. It's just being rerouted. Eric Dickerson didn't just criticize the Browns. He made one of the boldest accusations we've heard from an NFL legend in years, that head coach Kevin Stefanski and the Cleveland Browns lied about Shedeur Sanders' injury to deliberately keep him off the field against the Patriots. According to Dickerson, this wasn't a fluke, a mistake, or an overprotective coaching call. It was deliberate manipulation backed by insider knowledge. Let that sink in. A Hall of Famer is publicly saying a team faked a rookie quarterback's injury to suppress his opportunity to play. And the reason? Politics. Not football. Not development. Not safety. Politics. The story starts with a back injury. That's how the Browns explained Shedeur's sudden disappearance from the depth chart in a game they desperately needed to win. But that excuse started falling apart the moment fans saw Shedeur fully dressed and participating in warm-ups. No limp. No treatment. No medical limitation. Just a healthy rookie QB going through the motions like he was ready to step in and contribute. And then, nothing. He didn't touch the field. The Browns turned instead to Bailey Zapp, a practice squad quarterback promoted to backup status at the last second, while Shedeur stood on the sideline. Not benched for bad play. Not sidelined for discipline. Sidelined for a phantom injury he says wasn't even his decision. Shedeur himself made it clear, he could have played. He was able. He wanted to. But the decision was made for him. And when a player says he's healthy and ready, but the team calls it an injury anyway, that's not just suspect. That's deception. And according to Dickerson, it wasn't just deception, it was sabotage. He said it plainly. This was about stopping Shedeur from rising. About limiting a rookie with real promise because of who he is and where he comes from. This was about controlling the narrative, not the offense. And when you look at the Browns' actual performance, it becomes even more embarrassing. They're dead last in offense. No spark. No direction. No leadership. And when things started falling apart against the Patriots, they still refused to insert Shedeur. Not because of risk. Not because of readiness. Because they never planned to. This wasn't coaching. This was gatekeeping. Shedeur is more than a talented quarterback. He's the son of Deion Sanders, someone who has shaken up every football room he's entered, whether as a player, coach, or media presence. Deion speaks loud, moves big, and refuses to play the old NFL political game. And that makes his son a target. The resentment toward Deion's presence in the sport has been growing for years. He's too confident, too vocal, too proud of his culture, too willing to call out hypocrisy. And that doesn't sit well with the NFL's power structure. Now Shedeur is dealing with the fallout. He represents everything some teams fear. A young black quarterback who won't wait quietly, who won't shrink to fit their narrative, who already walks in with a name and a legacy, and isn't afraid to live up to it. Dickerson says this isn't just about one game. It's part of a larger, long-standing pattern. A pattern where the NFL systematically pushes down players who don't fit their mold. Players who are connected to outspoken figures. Players who use their voices. Players like Colin Kaepernick, Eric Reed, Cam Newton. The ones who, despite undeniable talent, found themselves boxed out, marginalized, and rebranded as distractions. Shedeur hasn't even been given the chance to become a distraction. He's been quiet, professional, respectful, and still they moved him out of the way. But because he didn't fit the plan, the Browns had every opportunity to put him in. They were losing. The offense was broken. Zap wasn't the answer. But instead of turning to the quarterback who was clearly physically able and eager, they created a fiction, something to justify leaving him on the bench without backlash. But Dickerson pulled the curtain back. He said what so many people had been too afraid to, that this was personal, that this was a calculated move to hold back Shedeur Sanders, not because of what he can't do, but because of what he can. And what he can do is win. He's shown it before. He's shown leadership, toughness, patience. He's shown poise in pressure situations. NFL scouts saw it. His college tape proved it. But none of that mattered when politics got involved. Because if Shedeur went out there and shined, everything the Browns had been doing, every excuse, every rotation, every quarterback decision, would have collapsed. That's why they couldn't let him play. They didn't want him to succeed, not yet. Not now. Not in that moment. And that's not just bad coaching. That's dangerous. You don't develop talent by sidelining it out of fear. You don't fake injuries to protect egos. You don't manipulate narratives to keep certain players from getting their shot. But that's what the NFL has done time and again to players who challenge the system. And Dickerson's point is that we're watching it happen in real time again, right in front of us. The league wants compliance, not charisma. Obedience, not ownership. Especially from black quarterbacks. They want you grateful, not great. Quiet, not commanding. And if your last name is Sanders? Good luck. But Shedeur hasn't wavered. Despite all of it, he's stayed calm, focused, ready. He hasn't lashed out. Hasn't played into the drama. And that grace under pressure is exactly why this narrative can't hold. Eventually, the Browns will run out of excuses. Eventually, the fans will demand answers. Eventually, Shedeur will get the chance they've been trying to delay. And when that happens, it's going to be obvious what this was really about. Because there was never a back injury. There was fear. There was control. There was resentment. But no injury. So the question now is, how long does the NFL think it can keep suppressing players like Shedeur? How long can they spin medical reports and manipulate depth charts before the truth bursts through? Dickerson made it clear, this wasn't just an error in judgment. This was systemic. And it mirrors everything we've seen for years. When talent threatens tradition, the league doesn't embrace it. It erases it. But Shedeur won't be erased. The harder they push him down, the more people start asking why. And the more they ask, the more the lies fall apart. So where do you stand? Was Shedeur really injured? Or was this an organizational decision disguised as a medical one? Should Kevin Stefanski be held accountable for what looks like a calculated attempt to suppress a player's opportunity? And is the NFL still holding on to the same playbook that's cost them some of the most dynamic athletes in football history? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you see through the noise. Share it with someone who needs to hear the full story. And hit subscribe, because we're going to keep exposing the stories the league wants to bury. Because at the end of the day, talent rises. And no injury report, real or fake, is going to stop Shedeur Sanders from getting what he's earned. The NFL can try to bury the story, but the stench of dishonesty lingers. And in this case, it's not just any story. It's about a young quarterback, one with undeniable talent and poise, being iced out of a critical game, and not because he wasn't ready, but because the organization wasn't ready for him. Eric Dickerson didn't stumble onto a theory. He came forward with claims rooted in what he says are real conversations with people inside the league. Not rumors. Not speculation. Insider information. And what those insiders told him was simple and damning. Shedeur Sanders was not injured. That injury was made up. Faked. Used as a shield to keep him on the bench during the Browns' matchup against the Patriots. Now stop right there. Because in any other profession, faking an injury to block someone's advancement would be a scandal. A lawsuit. A career-ending exposure. But in the NFL? It's just another way to preserve the hierarchy. This is about control. Shedeur Sanders represents a threat to that control. Not because he's difficult. Not because he's controversial. Because he's ready. Because he's capable. Because he's associated with someone who makes the NFL deeply uncomfortable, Deion Sanders. And let's be honest, the resentment toward Deion didn't start when Shedeur put on an NFL jersey. It started the moment Deion took over at Jackson State, used his platform to give HBCU athletes visibility, and challenged the entire college recruiting structure. It grew when he brought that same unapologetic energy to Colorado and made the team one of the most talked-about programs in the country. It escalated when he told the truth about how young black men are treated in this sport and refused to apologize for expecting excellence. Deion doesn't fit in. He doesn't play politics. And he doesn't care to be liked. He plays to win, and worse for the NFL, he wins on his terms. And now, his son is in the league. Shedeur doesn't have to raise his voice to get attention. He doesn't have to stir controversy to be relevant. His game speaks for itself. His presence commands respect. And that's precisely why he's been targeted. Because if Shedeur goes out there and succeeds, the league doesn't just have to acknowledge him. They have to acknowledge Deion. And the message that would send is one the league isn't prepared to support. So what do? They control the narrative. A last-minute back injury shows up before the game. A quarterback who warmed up just fine is quietly scratched. A practice squad player jumps the depth chart. And when the offense struggles, no correction. No changes. Just excuses. Except people aren't buying it. Dickerson isn't just some media guy chasing clicks. He's a Hall of Fame player. He's been in the locker room. He's watched how these decisions get made and, more importantly, how they get disguised. He knows what a fake injury looks like. And when he says this was orchestrated, he's not just speculating, he's indicting an entire system. He's saying the NFL is still playing by the same old rulebook. The one that rewards silence and punishes visibility. The one that lets coaches protect their jobs by manipulating opportunity. The one that insists on humility from black quarterbacks, no matter how talented they are. And the one that sees an outspoken father like Deion Sanders as a liability, even when his son is doing everything right. This isn't about talent. It's about power. Because if it were about talent, Shedeur would have played. There is no football explanation for why the Browns would start Dillon Gabriel, elevate Bailey Zapp, and leave Shedeur in street clothes. There's no logic in keeping a game-ready quarterback off the field while your offense ranks dead last in the league. There's no justification for silence from the coaching staff when fans ask the obvious question, why didn't he play? The answer, according to Dickerson, is simple. They never intended to let him play. This wasn't a sudden decision. This was premeditated. And it raises a much bigger question. How often does this happen? How many young players are labeled injured when they're not? How many are pushed down the depth chart not because of performance, but because of politics? How often do coaching staffs like Stefanski's make decisions to serve their own job security at the expense of a player's development? Shedeur's story is exposing a blueprint. A system that doesn't just sideline players, it manufactures reasons to justify it. And the worst part? They didn't expect anyone to call them out. They thought the injury label would be enough. That fans would move on. That media would spin it as protecting the rookie. That Shedeur would stay quiet. But they forgot who his father is. They forgot that silence doesn't equal submission. And they didn't count on someone like Eric Dickerson stepping in and blowing it wide open. What's happening to Shedeur isn't isolated. It's part of a pattern. Dickerson is connecting dots that a lot of people in the league would rather pretend don't exist. From Kaepernick to Cam Newton to Shedeur, it's the same game. If you're too visible, too strong-willed, too connected to a message that challenges the league's image, you get frozen out. And if the Browns thought they could quietly bench Shedeur and control the conversation, they underestimated the audience. Fans aren't blind. They watched Shedeur warm up. They saw the tape. They read his quotes. They know this wasn't about pain management or recovery. It was about erasure. And they know that the NFL has a long history of doing this to players who come in with fire and refuse to let the league put it out. The Browns can try to wait this out, but it's too late. The trust is broken. The explanation doesn't hold. And every week Shedeur sits while that offense crumbles, the pressure on Stefanski grows. Because here's the thing about suppressing talent. It's temporary. Eventually, the cracks show. Eventually, the other quarterbacks falter. Eventually, the excuses collapse under their own weight. And when that happens, Shedeur will still be there, still prepared, still poised, still the quarterback they tried to pretend wasn't ready. But the truth always finds daylight. And this time, it's already halfway through the door. So what happens now? Does the NFL investigate this? Probably not. Do the Browns issue a statement? Doubtful. But what will happen is that fans, players, and voices like Dickerson's will keep talking. They'll keep pulling at this thread until the whole thing unravels. And when it does, it won't just vindicate Shedeur. It'll expose the playbook the league's been using for far too long. The longer this story stays in the spotlight, the more the NFL will have to face something it's spent years trying to dodge: accountability. Shedeur Sanders isn't some project player. He's not a developmental longshot. He's a poised, NFL-ready quarterback with bloodlines, game tape, and leadership qualities that stack up against anyone drafted ahead of him. His name carries weight, yes, but not because he's riding on legacy. It's because he's earned that weight. He's put in the work. He's delivered under pressure. He's shown up. And still, he was kept off the field, without warning, without explanation, and under a flimsy excuse that fell apart the moment cameras captured him warming up like nothing was wrong. And that's what makes this so outrageous. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to smell what this really is. You just have to look at the timeline. There were no injury concerns during the week. No limited practice reports. No whispers about soreness or risk. Then game day hits, Shedeur suits up, goes through warm-ups, looks like he's preparing to play, and then he doesn't. Instead, the coaching staff elevates Bailey Zapp, a practice squad quarterback, to the active roster and puts him ahead of Shedeur on the depth chart. And when people ask why, the Browns quietly float the back injury claim. No details. No confirmation from Shedeur. Just a line on the status report and the hope that no one would question it. But then Shedeur did speak. And he said what needed to be said. The decision wasn't his. He was ready. He was able. He wanted to play. So now we're left with a very specific truth. Someone made that call. Someone decided that a healthy rookie quarterback should be benched, and instead of owning that decision, they hid behind an injury that didn't exist. And that someone is Kevin Stefanski. This isn't just a questionable coaching move. It's a move that goes against everything coaches say they believe in. Compete. Earn your reps. Be ready. Perform in practice, and you'll be rewarded. But Shedeur did all of that. He trained. He prepared. He didn't rock the boat. And still he was boxed out. But because this was never about readiness. It was about control. Control over the narrative. Control over Deion Sanders' growing influence. Control over a team that's crumbling offensively and doesn't want to admit it might be benching the one guy who could turn things around. Eric Dickerson's accusation didn't come out of nowhere. He says he got this from inside the league. From people who know what went down. And he's not just venting. He's making a direct, factual claim. The Browns faked an injury to keep Shedeur off the field. Period. And if that's true, and every piece of this points to it being true, then it's more than just a personnel decision. It's a betrayal. The betrayal of the player. The betrayal of the fans. A betrayal of everything this league claims to stand for when it talks about giving players a fair shot. And let's not dance around what this also reveals. The racial politics of quarterbacking in the NFL are still very real. The names keep coming up for a reason. Colin Kaepernick. Cam Newton. Eric Reid. They're not just examples of outspoken players, they're examples of talented black athletes who were punished not for what they couldn't do, but for who they were and what they represented. Dickerson's comparison is intentional. He's drawing a line from those stories to Shedeur's. Because the playbook hasn't changed. Label them as a distraction. Question their fit. Create a media narrative. And when all else fails, manufacture an injury. This time, it was a back. Next time, it could be anything. As long as it keeps the player out of the spotlight, the system keeps moving. Unbothered. Unquestioned. Except now, it is being questioned. Because Dickerson brought it into the open. And when someone with his credibility starts calling it out for what it is, the league can't hide behind vague language anymore. They can't call this protecting the player. Not when the player says he was fine. They can't call this a coaching decision. Not when the team is losing and their best option is being shelved. They can't say they're committed to developing young talent when the most promising young quarterback in the building can't get a single snap. So let's talk about development. Let's talk about what the Browns are choosing to develop instead. They're developing mediocrity. They're developing a culture of silence. They're developing a team that would rather fake an injury than admit they're afraid of a rookie with a last name that scares the establishment. And Shedeur? He's not the problem. He's the proof of the problem. Because despite being lied about, sidelined, and strategically erased, he's stayed calm. He's kept his head down. He's kept grinding. No complaints. No theatrics. Just quiet professionalism. And that scares them even more. Because it means he's not going away. He's not burning bridges. He's not giving them an excuse. He's doing what so many others before him tried to do. Stay ready, stay sharp, and wait for the moment when the truth catches up to the lie. That moment is coming. It might not be in Cleveland. And honestly, after this, it probably shouldn't be. But somewhere, a team will recognize what the Browns tried to hide. And when Shedeur finally gets to step on the field without politics, without interference, without fake injury reports holding him back, that's when everything will change. Because this isn't about just one player. This is about the way the NFL treats young black athletes with a voice. It's about how teams protect themselves instead of their talent. It's about how honesty gets buried to keep the power structure intact. And it's about time someone paid the price for it. So what should happen next? At the very least, Kevin Stefanski owes fans, and Shedeur, a real explanation. Not a one-line injury report. Not vague talk about development. A real answer. But that's not likely to happen. Because to tell the truth now would mean admitting to the lie. And if you're wondering how far a franchise will go to protect a narrative, this might be the clearest example yet. Let us know your take. Was this just bad coaching? Or a coordinated effort to keep Shedeur down? Should Stefanski be investigated for this? And is the NFL ever going to reckon with how deeply politics still influence who gets to play and who gets pushed out? Comment below and sound off. Like this if you've had enough of watching talent get buried. Share it if you think more people need to hear the truth. And subscribe if you're not afraid to talk about the side of football the league doesn't want on camera. Because this story isn't over. And neither is Shedeur Sanders.